The silk wedding dress weighed 1,000 pounds as Zelda Hartwell stood at the back of Tropic's only church, listening to the murmur of 200 guests waiting beyond those wooden doors. And she knew with absolute certainty that she could not walk down that aisle to marry Edmund Crowley no matter what it cost her. The June heat of 1882 pressed through the small anteroom windows, and her hands shook as she stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror, seeing not a bride but a prisoner about to accept her sentence. Her father, Charles Hartwell, owned the largest bank in southern Utah Territory, and this marriage had been arranged like a business transaction, which she supposed it was. Edmund was 42, successful and cruel in small ways that nobody else seemed to notice. The way he gripped her arm too tightly when they walked, the way he spoke over her as though her words held no weight, the way his eyes went cold when she dared to disagree. 5 minutes, Miss Hartwell, the Reverend's wife called through the door, her voice bright with the happiness that should have belonged to Zelda but never would. Zelda looked at the door leading outside, the one the Reverend's wife had left unguarded. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She thought of her mother, dead these past 3 years, and wondered what she would say. But deep in her bones, Zelda knew her mother would have told her to run, to choose a hard life of her own, making over an easy life that would slowly kill her spirit. She grabbed the skirts of her wedding dress in both hands and pushed through that door into the blinding Utah sunshine. The dress was ridiculous for running, layers of ivory silk and lace that her father had imported from San Francisco, but she gathered it up and ran anyway. Behind her, she heard a shout, then another. Someone had seen her. She ran harder, her white satin shoes slipping on the red dust that covered everything in Tropic. The town sat in a valley surrounded by spectacular red rock formations, and she ran toward them now, toward the wilderness, toward anything that was not that church and that marriage and that life. Zelda, stop. Her father's voice boomed across the town square, and she heard the thunder of boots on the church steps. They were coming after her. She ran past the general store, past the saloon where men stood gaping in the doorway, past the blacksmith who stopped his hammer mid-swing. Her lungs burned and the dress kept trying to tangle around her legs, but terror gave her speed. She ducked into an alley between 2 buildings and kept running, heading for the edge of town where the desert began its slow climb toward the mountains. If she could just reach the rocks, the maze of canyons and formations, maybe she could hide. The alley ended and she burst out onto the road that led north out of Tropic. She could hear her father and Edmund and others behind her, their voices angry now. A gunshot cracked the air, fired into the sky, a warning or an attempt to make her stop. She did not stop. She ran until her legs trembled and her breath came in sobs, ran until the voices behind her began to fade, ran until she stumbled and nearly fell in the rutted road. That was when she saw the rider. He came from the direction she was heading, a lone man on a bay horse, riding at an easy pace. He wore dusty work clothes, a brown hat pulled low against the sun, and he sat his horse like someone who had been born in the saddle. When he saw her, her white dress brilliant against the red landscape, he pulled up his horse and simply watched her approach. She did not slow down, did not think, just ran straight toward him. "Please," she gasped when she was close enough. "Please help me. They are coming. Please." The rider looked past her to where the pursuit was visible now, a group of men on foot and a few on horses, still a good distance away but coming fast. He looked back at Zelda, taking in the wedding dress, the tear-streaked face, the desperation in her eyes. His own eyes were dark brown, almost black, set in a sun-weathered face that might have been anywhere from 25 to 35. He did not smile and he did not speak. He simply held out his hand. Zelda grabbed it, and he pulled her up behind him in one smooth motion, then turned his horse off the road and into the rocky terrain beside it. The bay horse moved carefully but quickly through the landscape, picking its way between juniper trees and around boulders. Zelda wrapped her arms around the stranger's waist and held on, her face pressed against his back, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Behind them, the shouts grew louder, then began to fade as the horse carried them deeper into the wilderness. They rode for what felt like hours but was probably less than one. The rider never spoke, never looked back, just guided his horse through terrain that seemed impossible to navigate. They climbed into higher country where ponderosa pines began to appear among the red rocks, where the air grew slightly cooler. Finally, they emerged into a small valley hidden among the cliffs, and Zelda saw a cabin built against the rock face, its logs weathered silver by sun and wind. The rider dismounted and held up his hand to help her down. Zelda slid from the horse, her legs nearly buckling. She stood swaying in her ridiculous wedding dress, suddenly aware of how insane she must look, how insane this whole situation was. She had just run from her wedding and thrown herself at the mercy of a complete stranger in the wilderness. "Thank you," she whispered. "I am sorry. I did not know what else to do." The rider finally spoke, his voice quiet and rough as though he did not use it much. "No need to apologize. Anyone running that hard from men with guns has good reason." He nodded toward the cabin. "You are safe here. They will not find this place." "I cannot impose on you," Zelda said, though she had no idea what else she could do. "You are not imposing," I offered. He began to unsaddle his horse. "There is water in the cabin. Food. Make yourself comfortable." Zelda stood there uncertain until he glanced at her again. "Go on. You look like you are about to fall over." She walked to the cabin on shaking legs and pushed open the door. Inside was a single room, simple but clean. A bed in one corner with a colorful woven blanket, a table and two chairs, a stone fireplace, shelves with supplies. A smaller door that she discovered led to a lean-to where he kept more food and equipment. Everything was orderly, cared for. She found a bucket of water and a tin cup and drank deeply, then sank into one of the chairs, her whole body trembling with exhaustion and shock at what she had done. The door opened, and the rider came in carrying his saddlebags. He set them down and looked at her, his expression unreadable. "My name is Owen Garrett," he said. "This is my land, my cabin. You can stay as long as you need to." "I am Zelda Hartwell," she said, and watched his eyes flicker with recognition at her last name. Everyone in southern Utah knew the Hartwell name. "I know who your father is," Owen said. "Does not change anything. You needed help, I gave it, that is all. He will be looking for me, my father, and Edmund my—" She could not say the word husband, the man I was supposed to marry. "They can look all they want. This valley is not easy to find if you do not know where it is." Owen moved to the fireplace and began building a fire, his movements economical and practiced. "You must be hungry." Zelda realized she was starving. She had been too nervous to eat that morning, and the run had drained what little energy she had. "Yes, but I have no money to pay you." "I have nothing. Did I ask for payment?" Owen did not look at her as he got the fire going. "I said you are welcome to stay. That includes food." "Why?" the question burst out of her. "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Owen was quiet for a long moment, feeding small sticks to the growing flames. "I know what it looks like when someone is running for their life. I know what it is like to feel trapped. And I know that sometimes the kindest thing one person can do for another is to ask no questions and expect nothing in return." He stood and went to his shelves, pulling down supplies. "That is why." Zelda felt tears prick her eyes, the first real tears since she had started running. All the fear and relief and gratitude crashed over her at once. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have saved my life." "You saved your own life," Owen said, glancing at her. "You were the one who ran. You were the one who chose freedom over whatever was waiting for you in that church. I just gave you a place to catch your breath." He made a simple meal of beans and cornbread, and they ate in silence. Zelda was intensely aware of how strange this was, sitting in a cabin with a man she had just met, still wearing her wedding dress, while somewhere in Tropic, her father was probably tearing the town apart looking for her. But she also felt safer than she had in months, maybe years. There was something solid and calm about Owen Garrett, something that made her believe his promise that she was safe here. After they ate, Owen cleared his throat. "You can have the bed. I will sleep outside. It is warm enough." "I cannot take your bed," Zelda protested. "You can and you will." "This is not up for debate." He stood and gathered his bedroll. "There is a creek about 50 yards east of the cabin if you want to wash. I will be outside if you need anything." He left before she could argue further. Zelda sat alone in the cabin as the light faded outside, trying to process everything that had happened. This morning, she had been Zelda Hartwell, the banker's daughter, about to make a respectable marriage that would secure her father's business connections and her own comfortable future. Now she was a runaway bride with nothing but the elaborate dress on her back, dependent on the charity of a stranger. But as she stood and began the complicated process of getting out of the wedding dress, fumbling with the buttons she could not quite reach, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt free. The next morning, Zelda woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin's small windows and the smell of coffee. She sat up, disoriented for a moment, then remembered everything. She was wearing her chemise and petticoats, having managed to get out of the dress but having nothing else to wear. The dress itself lay in a white puddle on the floor, looking even more ridiculous here than it had in Tropic. Owen knocked on the door frame, not entering. "I have coffee, and I am going to ride to the next town over, not Tropic, going to get you some proper clothes." "Cannot imagine that dress is comfortable." Zelda went to the door, wrapping the woven blanket from the bed around her shoulders. Owen stood outside, his back to the door, giving her privacy. "You do not have to do that," she said. "I know I do not have to, I want to. What size do you need?" Zelda told him, embarrassed, and he nodded. "I will be back by afternoon. There is food in the cabin. Do not answer the door for anyone but me. Not that anyone is likely to come by, but just in case." "Owen," she said, and he turned slightly, still not quite looking at her. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe I will tell you someday. For now, just accept it." Then he walked to where his horse was grazing and mounted up, and she watched him ride out of the valley. Zelda spent the morning exploring the area around the cabin. She found the creek Owen had mentioned, cold and clear, running down from the mountains above. She washed her face and arms, wishing she could wash away the feeling of Edmund's hand on her arm the last time they had walked together, his fingers digging in just a little too hard when she had asked if they might live somewhere other than Tropic after the wedding. "Your father and I have business here," he had said, his voice pleasant but his grip painful. "You will go where I say." She pushed the memory away and went back to the cabin. In the light of day, she could see that Owen lived simply but not poorly. He had books on a shelf which surprised her. She examined the titles: Shakespeare, Whitman, Darwin, a book on animal husbandry, another on geology. She realized she knew nothing about Owen Garrett, who he was, how he lived, what he did out here alone. He returned in the early afternoon with a bundle wrapped in brown paper. "I hope these fit," he said, handing it to her. "The woman at the store helped me guess." Inside were two simple calico dresses, sturdy and practical, A cotton nightgown, undergarments, a pair of boots, stockings, a wide-brimmed hat. "This is too much," Zelda said. "How can I ever repay you?" "You cannot," Owen said flatly. "And I do not want you to. They are yours. That is the end of it." He went to tend to his horse, effectively ending the conversation. Zelda changed into one of the dresses, a blue calico with tiny white flowers. It fit reasonably well, and the relief of being out of her wedding clothes was immense. She folded the wedding dress carefully, not sure what else to do with it, and tucked it away in the corner. It felt like burying her old life. That evening, as they ate dinner, Owen finally spoke more than a few words. "I heard talk in the town. Your father has men searching. They are looking toward the mountains east of Tropic, thinking you might have tried to get to the railroad. They are not looking this direction." "Good," Zelda said, then felt guilty. "I know I have hurt him, my father, but I could not marry Edmund. I just could not." "Why were you going to?" Owen asked. "If you knew you could not." Zelda considered the question. "Because it was easier to say yes than to fight, because my father wanted it. Because I thought maybe I could learn to tolerate it." She looked down at her plate. "Because I was a coward." "You ran from your own wedding in front of the whole town," Owen said. "Whatever you are not a coward." They fell into a routine over the next several days. Owen worked his land during the day. He had a few cattle, some chickens, a vegetable garden that was doing well in the summer heat. Zelda helped where she could, learning tasks she had never done in her protected life as the banker's daughter. She gathered eggs. She weeded the garden. She hauled water from the creek. Her hands, soft from a life of leisure, began to develop calluses. Owen spoke little, but Zelda found she did not mind the silence. It was comfortable, peaceful even. He never pressed her for conversation, never made her feel that she owed him anything. He simply went about his work and let her find her own way. In the evenings, they would sit outside the cabin and watch the sun set over the red rocks, painting the landscape in shades of orange and pink and purple that took her breath away. "Why do you live out here alone?" she asked him one evening, about a week after she had arrived. Owen was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, "I was a soldier, cavalry. I saw things, did things that made it hard to be around people. After my service ended, I came out here where it is quiet, where I do not have to explain myself to anyone." "Were you in the Indian Wars?" Zelda asked carefully. "Some. Also the tail end of the war between the states, though I was young then. Mostly I was stationed in Arizona Territory, dealing with Apache raids." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I followed orders. I did my duty, and when it was over I wanted to be alone." Zelda heard what he was not saying, the weight of whatever he had seen or done. "Thank you for telling me." "Your turn," Owen said. "Tell me about your life before last week." So Zelda told him. About growing up as Charles Hartwell's only child after her mother died, giving birth to a son who also died. About how her father had poured all his ambitions into her, but only as an extension of himself. About the tutors and the finishing school in Denver, and the constant pressure to be perfect, to reflect well on the Hartwell name. About how Edmund Crowley had approached her father with a business proposal that included marrying his daughter, and how her father had accepted without asking her opinion. "Did you ever want something different?" Owen asked. "I wanted to teach," Zelda said. "I love books, learning, ideas. I thought maybe I could teach at a school, help children learn to read and think for themselves. But my father said no daughter of his would work like a common woman. He said my job was to marry well and give him grandchildren." She laughed bitterly. "I suppose I have failed at that." "Or succeeded at choosing your own path," Owen said. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out, brilliant in the dark sky far from any town lights. Zelda felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, something warm and complicated. She was drawn to Owen in a way she had never been drawn to Edmund or any of the other men her father had paraded in front of her over the years. But she did not know if what she felt was genuine attraction or simply gratitude and proximity. And anyway, Owen had given no indication that he saw her as anything other than someone who needed help. 2 weeks after Zelda had arrived, Owen came back from a trip to the distant town with news. "Your father has offered a reward, $500 for information leading to your safe return. He is saying you were kidnapped, that you did not run away. He has the whole territory believing you are in danger." Zelda felt cold despite the summer heat. "Of course he is. He cannot admit that I chose to leave. That would make him look bad." "There is more," Owen said, his expression grim. "Edmund Crowley is leading the search parties now. He is taking it personally. Some folks say he has been making threats about what he will do when he finds whoever helped you." "I should leave," Zelda said immediately. "I should go farther away. If they find me here, if they find out you helped me, Edmund will hurt you, or my father will have you arrested for kidnapping. I cannot let that happen." "You are not going anywhere," Owen said firmly. "You are safe here. I can handle Edmund Crowley and your father both if it comes to that." "You do not understand. My father is powerful. He owns half the territory through loans and business deals. If he wants to destroy you, he can. Then let him try." Owen's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "I have been through worse than a banker and his business partner. You stay here until you decide where you want to go and what you want to do. That is final." Zelda wanted to argue, but she could see it would do no good. Owen had made up his mind, and if she was honest with herself, she did not want to leave. She was happier here in this small valley, working hard every day and talking with Owen every evening, than she had ever been in her father's big house in Tropic with servants and fine clothes, and everything she was supposed to want. That night she lay awake in Owen's bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening to her. She had known Owen for only 2 weeks, and in that time he had been nothing but kind and respectful, keeping his distance, asking nothing of her. And yet she found herself thinking about him constantly. The way he moved, economical and sure. The rare times he smiled, a small quirk of his mouth that transformed his whole face. The gentleness in his work-roughened hands when he handled the animals or tended his garden. The intelligence in his dark eyes when they talked in the evenings. She was falling in love with him, she realized. Actually, truly falling in love, not the pale imitation she had tried to convince herself. She felt for Edmund in order to make the marriage bearable. This was real and terrifying and wonderful all at once, but Owen had given no sign that he felt anything similar. He was kind to her, yes, but he would probably be kind to anyone who needed help. He had said himself that he had come out here to be alone. The last thing he likely wanted was the banker's daughter falling in love with him and complicating his peaceful life. The next morning, Zelda made a decision. She would help more, contribute more, make herself useful enough that Owen would not see her as a burden. If she could not have his love, at least she could earn her place here through work. She threw herself into the tasks of the homestead with new energy. She learned to milk the cow Owen kept, though her first attempts were clumsy and the cow looked at her with what Zelda swore was disdain. She learned to make bread, burning the first 3 loaves before finally producing something edible. She mended Owen's clothes, which badly needed it, and weeded the garden until her back ached. Owen watched her with what might have been amusement. "You do not have to work yourself to death," he said one evening. "I told you you are welcome here." "I know," Zelda said, "but I want to help. I want to be useful, not just someone you are taking care of." Something shifted in Owen's expression. "You think you are not useful?" "Zelda," You have been a godsend. The garden looks better than it has in years. My clothes are actually mended for once, and having someone to talk to in the evenings is more valuable than you know." He paused. "You do not owe me anything, but if helping makes you feel better, then I am grateful for it." July turned into August. The weather grew hotter, the sun beating down relentlessly on the red rock landscape. Zelda's skin, once pale and protected, turned golden despite the wide-brimmed hat. Her hands were no longer soft, and her body was stronger from the physical work. She barely recognized herself when she caught her reflection in the water bucket. She looked like a different person from the girl who had fled her wedding in a silk dress. One evening, Owen taught her to shoot. He set up targets against the canyon wall and showed her how to hold the rifle, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger gently. Zelda's first shot went wide, making her jump at the recoil. But Owen was patient, adjusting her stance, his hands warm and steady on her shoulders. By the end of the evening, she was hitting the targets more often than not. "Why did you decide to teach me this?" she asked as they walked back to the cabin. "Because you should know how to protect yourself," Owen said. "If something happened to me, or if you decided to leave, you need to be able to handle a gun. This is still wild country, no matter how peaceful it seems." The thought of something happening to Owen made Zelda's stomach clench with fear. "Nothing is going to happen to you. You do not know that." Owen's voice was gentle. "Life is uncertain, Zelda. Best to be prepared." They were standing close together in the fading light, and Zelda could see the concern in Owen's eyes. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you for everything, for saving me, for teaching me, for being patient with me." Owen looked down at where her hand rested on his, and for a moment Zelda thought he might pull away. But instead, he turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers. "You do not need to thank me. Having you here has been good. I did not realize how lonely I was until I had company." They stood there, hands linked, neither of them moving. Zelda's heart was beating so hard she was sure Owen could hear it. She wanted to tell him how she felt, wanted to ask if there was any chance he might feel the same. But before she could find the words, Owen squeezed her hand gently and stepped back. "We should get inside. Going to rain tonight by the look of those clouds." The moment was broken, and Zelda followed him into the cabin, her hand still warm from his touch. The rain came that night, a summer storm that battered the cabin with wind and water. Zelda lay in bed listening to it, thinking about Owen sleeping outside in his camp under the overhang of rock near the cabin. She hated that he gave up his bed for her every night, hated that he was out in the weather because of her. Tomorrow, she decided, she would insist on some other arrangement. It was ridiculous for him to sleep outside his own home for weeks on end. But when morning came, Owen was already up and working, acting as though sleeping in the rain was nothing unusual. When Zelda brought up the sleeping arrangements, he cut her off. "We are not discussing this. You take the bed. That is how it is." "Owen, please. I can sleep on the floor, or we can work out some kind of schedule, or no." His voice was firm. "I have slept in worse places than a comfortable bedroll under a rock overhang. The bed is yours. End of discussion." Zelda wanted to argue, but she could see it was pointless. Owen could be immovable when he decided something. It was one of the things she loved about him, his quiet certainty, even when it frustrated her. Love. She had thought the word so casually, but it hit her now with its full weight. She loved him. She loved Owen Garrett, this quiet man who had asked nothing of her, who had given her shelter and safety and kindness when she had nothing to offer in return. She loved his strength and his gentleness, his intelligence and his patience, the way he moved through the world with such calm certainty. She loved the rare sound of his laugh when she said something that amused him. She loved the way he looked at the mountains in the evening as though they were old friends. She loved him completely and hopelessly, and she had no idea what to do about it. The problem was made worse by the fact that they were living in such close quarters, seeing each other every day, working side by side. Every accidental touch felt electric. Every evening conversation felt intimate. Zelda found herself watching Owen when he did not know she was looking, memorizing the way he moved, the line of his profile against the sunset, the way his rare smiles changed his whole face. She thought sometimes that he might feel something too. The way he looked at her occasionally, his expression unguarded, the way he had held her hand that evening after the shooting lesson, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her. But he never acted on it, never pushed, never suggested that their relationship might be anything other than what it was. A rescuer and the woman he had rescued. Maybe that was all it could ever be, Zelda thought. Maybe Owen saw her as a responsibility, someone he had taken in and now had to care for. Maybe he was just naturally kind and she was reading too much into every gesture. Or maybe, and this thought hurt worst of all, maybe he simply did not see her that way. Maybe he looked at her and saw only Charles Hartwell's spoiled daughter, someone from a different world who would never really fit into his life. It was late August when everything changed. Owen had ridden to the distant town for supplies, and Zelda was alone at the cabin, working in the garden. She heard horses and looked up to see 3 men riding into the valley. Her blood went cold. She recognized one of them immediately. Edmund Crowley. Zelda dropped her basket of vegetables and ran for the cabin, but Edmund spurred his horse forward and cut her off. He dismounted and the look on his face was terrifying. "Hello, Zelda. Your father has been very worried about you." "Get away from me," Zelda said, backing toward the cabin. Her rifle was inside, if she could just reach it. "I do not think so." Edmund moved closer. "You have caused a lot of trouble running away like that, made me look like a fool in front of the whole territory, made your father spend thousands of dollars searching for you. That is going to stop now. I am not going back with you." "Yes, you are." Edmund grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully, and Zelda remembered that grip, that casual cruelty. "You are going to come back to Tropic. We are going to get married quietly, and you are going to forget this whole incident ever happened. Your father and I have worked too hard on our business arrangement for you to ruin it with your childish behavior." Zelda tried to pull away, but Edmund's grip was like iron. The other 2 men had dismounted now, blocking any escape route. "Let me go," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am not marrying you, Edmund. I am never marrying you." Edmund's other hand came up fast, striking her across the face hard enough to make her see stars. "You will do exactly what I tell you to do. You are nothing but a spoiled girl who thinks she can defy her betters. Time to learn your place." Zelda tasted blood in her mouth. Through her ringing ears, she heard one of the other men say, "Crowley, maybe we should just take her back. Her father said not to hurt her." "Her father is not here," Edmund said coldly, "and someone needs to teach her that actions have consequences." He raised his hand again, and Zelda braced herself for another blow. It never came. There was a shout, the thunder of hooves, and suddenly Owen was there, his horse sliding to a stop in the dust. He was off the animal before it had fully stopped, and he had Edmund by the throat, lifting him off his feet and slamming him against the cabin wall. "You touch her again and I will kill you," Owen said, his voice absolutely calm, which somehow made the threat more terrifying. "Do you understand me?" Edmund made a choking sound, clawing at Owen's hand. The other 2 men started forward, but Owen looked at them and they stopped. "I would not," he said conversationally. "I have killed more men than I care to remember. 2 more will not bother me at all." "You are making a big mistake," one of the men said, but his hand was nowhere near his gun. "That is Edmund Crowley. He is a powerful man, and that is Charles Hartwell's daughter. You are in a lot of trouble." "I do not care." Owen still had not raised his voice. He looked at Edmund, who was starting to turn purple. "You are going to leave now. All three of you. You are going to ride back to Tropic and tell Charles Hartwell that his daughter is safe. She is here of her own free will, and she is not coming back. If any of you come near this property again, I will shoot you on sight. Is that clear?" He released Edmund, who collapsed to his knees, gasping. For a moment, Zelda thought Edmund might try to fight, might do something stupid. But whatever he saw in Owen's face made him think better of it. He staggered to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth where he had bitten his tongue. "This is not over," Edmund rasped. "I will come back with the law. I will have you arrested for kidnapping. You will hang for this." "She is standing right there," Owen said, nodding at Zelda. "She can tell the law herself that she came here willingly, that I have never harmed her, that she wants to stay. Good luck making a kidnapping charge stick when the supposed victim contradicts your story." Edmund looked at Zelda, and the hatred in his eyes made her shiver. "You think you are free? You think you can just run away and start a new life? You are Charles Hartwell's daughter. You belong to him, and through him to me. We will make your life a living hell. We will destroy this man who is harboring you. We will take everything he has. And in the end, you will come crawling back and beg to marry me." "Get out," Owen said. "Now, before I forget I am trying to be civilized." The three men mounted their horses. As they rode out of the valley, Edmund turned back once. "This is not finished, Garrett, not by a long shot." Then they were gone, and Owen turned to Zelda. His eyes went to the blood on her lip, the red mark on her face where Edmund had struck her, and something dangerous flashed in his expression. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you anywhere else?" "I am fine," Zelda said, though she was shaking. "You came back just in time. I saw their tracks on the trail, knew something was wrong." Owen reached out carefully and touched her face, his fingers gentle around the bruise that was already forming. "I am so sorry. I should not have left you alone. You could not have known they would find this place." Zelda leaned into his touch, suddenly overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. "Owen, you heard what Edmund said. He will come back with the law or with more men. He and my father will not stop. I have to leave. I have to go somewhere they cannot find me. You are not going anywhere." Owen's hand moved to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing away the blood at the corner of her mouth. "We will figure this out together. They will destroy you," Zelda whispered. "They will take your land, your freedom, everything, because of me. I cannot let that happen." "Then marry me," Owen said. Zelda stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What? Marry me?" Owen's dark eyes were intense on hers. "If you are my wife, your father has no legal claim on you anymore. You will be under my protection, my responsibility. Edmund cannot touch you. Your father cannot force you to do anything. Marry me, Zelda." "You do not want to marry me," Zelda said, her heart breaking even as hope flared in her chest. "You are just trying to protect me. You are sacrificing yourself because you are too good and too kind, and I will not let you do that. Zelda." Owen's other hand came up, so he was cradling her face in both hands. "I am not that noble. I am asking you to marry me because I want to. Because somewhere in the last 2 months you have become the most important person in my world. Because I wake up every morning grateful that you are here. Because the thought of you leaving makes me feel like I cannot breathe." He took a shaky breath. "I am asking you to marry me because I love you. I have loved you for weeks now, and I did not say anything because I did not think you could ever feel the same way about someone like me. But life is short and uncertain, and I would rather tell you the truth and risk rejection than never tell you at all." Tears were streaming down Zelda's face. "You love me." So much it scares me, Owen admitted. I know I am not what your father would have chosen for you. I am not rich or powerful or well-connected. I am just a former soldier trying to make a life in the wilderness. But I swear to you, Zelda, if you say yes, I will spend the rest of my life making you happy. I will protect you and respect you and love you until the day I die. You will never be trapped with me. You will never be controlled or hurt or diminished. I will be your partner, not your master. That is my promise to you. Owen, Zelda said through her tears, I do not want someone rich or powerful. I do not want my father's choice. I want you. I have wanted you for so long I thought I would burst from not being able to tell you, I love you. I love your quiet strength and your kindness and your intelligence. I love the life we have built here together. I love who I am when I am with you. Yes. Yes, I will marry you. 1,000 times yes. Owen made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Zelda wrapped her arms around him and held on just as tightly, feeling like she had finally come home after a long journey. When Owen pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes were bright with emotion. Then he kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper, and Zelda felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. We should do this quickly. The sooner you are legally my wife, the better. There is a justice of the peace in the next town over. We can ride there tomorrow. Yes, Zelda agreed. Then she smiled, a real smile for the first time since Edmund had ridden into the valley. Though I have to say, this is the second time I have agreed to get married in the span of 2 months. I am beginning to think I am impulsive. Owen laughed, the sound rich and warm. The difference is this time you are choosing for yourself. This time you are saying yes because you want to, not because someone is forcing you. I am saying yes because I love you, Zelda corrected. That makes all the difference in the world. They rode out at dawn the next morning, heading to the town of Cannonville, which was a day's ride away and unlikely to have heard about the search for Zelda Hartwell. Owen had a friend there, a former Army comrade named Samuel Porter, who was now the justice of the peace. If anyone could be trusted to perform the marriage quietly and quickly, it was Samuel. The ride was beautiful, through red rock canyons and past spectacular formations that glowed in the morning light. Owen and Zelda rode close together, and every time their horses moved near each other and their legs brushed, Zelda felt a thrill of happiness. She was going to marry Owen. She was going to spend her life with this good, quiet man who had saved her and then loved her. It seemed too wonderful to be real. They reached Cannonville by late afternoon and found Samuel Porter at his small office near the center of town. He was a stocky man with graying hair and a weathered face that broke into a huge smile when he saw Owen. Owen Garrett. What in blazes are you doing here? I have not seen you in 3 years. Hello, Samuel, I need a favor. Owen drew Zelda forward. This is Zelda Hartwell. We would like to get married, today if possible. Samuel's eyebrows shot up. Hartwell, as in Charles Hartwell, the banker. That is my father, Zelda said quietly. But I am here of my own free will, making my own choice. I want to marry Owen. Samuel looked between them, taking in their clasped hands the way they stood close together, the obvious affection in their faces. All right then. If you are both sure about this, I can perform the ceremony right now. Do you have witnesses? Owen looked around. A woman had just walked into the office, an older lady carrying a basket of vegetables. Owen approached her. Excuse me, madam. My fiancé and I are about to get married. Would you and anyone else who is available be willing to witness our ceremony? We would be grateful. The woman looked at Zelda's happy, nervous face and smiled. Of course, dear. Nothing I like better than a wedding. Let me get my husband from the store. She bustled out and returned moments later with a tall man who looked amused by the whole situation. Samuel cleared his throat and opened his book. "Well then, let us begin. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here." The ceremony was short and simple, nothing like the elaborate wedding that had been planned in Tropic. But to Zelda it was perfect. When Samuel asked if she took Owen to be her husband, she said, "I do," with absolute certainty. When Owen slipped a simple gold band on her finger, his hand was steady but his eyes were bright with emotion. And when Samuel pronounced them husband and wife, and Owen kissed her, Zelda felt like the luckiest woman in the world. They spent their wedding night in Cannonville's small hotel, and Zelda discovered that the physical side of marriage was very different when you loved your husband, and he loved you in return. Owen was gentle and patient, making sure she was comfortable, showing her with his touch how much he cherished her. Afterwards, lying in his arms in the dark, Zelda felt a peace she had never known. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. "I love you, Mrs. Garrett," Owen murmured against her hair. "I love you too, Mr. Garrett," Zelda said, smiling at the sound of her new name. "Though I have to admit, a part of me is terrified about what comes next. My father will not give up easily." "Let him try," Owen said. "You are my wife now. I will protect you with everything I have." They rode back to the cabin the next day, and for a few weeks it seemed like maybe they would be left in peace. They settled into married life, and Zelda discovered that being married to Owen was different from anything she had imagined marriage could be. He treated her as an equal partner, asking her opinion on decisions about the homestead, teaching her skills without condescension, doing his share of the household work without complaint. They worked side by side during the day and talked for hours in the evenings, learning everything about each other. And at night, in the bed they now shared, Owen made her feel cherished and desired in ways that still made her blush to think about in the daylight. But their peace did not last. 6 weeks after their wedding, in early October, Owen returned from a trip to the distant town with grim news. "Your father has filed suit. He is claiming I kidnapped you and coerced you into marriage. He is demanding the marriage be annulled and that I be arrested." Zelda felt cold. "Can he do that? He can try." Samuel sent word. "There is a hearing scheduled in 2 weeks at the territorial courthouse in Panguitch. We both have to be there to give testimony." Owen's jaw was tight. "Your father is bringing Edmund Crowley as a witness, claiming you were engaged to him and I stole you away." "What happens if the judge sides with my father?" Zelda asked, though she was afraid of the answer. "Then our marriage is annulled and I face charges of kidnapping and possibly other crimes. You would be returned to your father's custody." Owen took her hands. "But that is not going to happen. We have Samuel to testify that you married me of your own free will. We have the couple who witnessed our wedding, and you will tell the truth about why you ran and why you chose to stay with me." "My father is very persuasive," Zelda said quietly, "and he has a lot of influence in Utah territory. Judges and lawyers and lawmen, they all owe him favors." "Then we will have to trust that the truth is stronger than his influence," Owen said. The 2 weeks before the hearing were tense. Zelda tried to continue with their daily routine, but she was constantly worried about what would happen. She could not shake the image of Owen in chains, arrested because he had helped her. She could not bear the thought of being dragged back to Tropic, back under her father's control, forced to marry Edmund after all. On the night before they were due to leave for Panguitch, Zelda could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Owen breathed steadily beside her. "Owen," she whispered, "are you awake?" "Yes." His hand found hers under the blanket. "I have been awake for hours. I am frightened." "I know, so am I. What if it goes wrong? What if they separate us?" Owen rolled to face her in the darkness. Then we will run. We will go so far away your father will never find us. We will change our names and start over. Whatever it takes, Zelda, we stay together. I promise you that. You would give up your home for me, your land, in a heartbeat." Owen's voice was fierce. "This cabin, this land, it was just a place to me before you came. You are my home now. Wherever we are together, that is home. Nothing else matters." Zelda kissed him, pouring all her love and fear and hope into it. They made love slowly, tenderly, and afterwards Owen held her until she finally fell asleep. They rode to Panguitch the next morning, a journey of several hours. The town was larger than Tropic, the seat of Garfield County with a proper courthouse and several hotels. Owen got them a room, and they spent the evening preparing what Zelda would say at the hearing. Samuel Porter arrived that evening as well, ready to testify on their behalf. The hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock the next morning. Zelda dressed carefully in her best dress, which was not very fancy but was clean and respectable. Her hands shook as she tried to pin up her hair. Owen helped her, his fingers steady, and then took her face in his hands. "Whatever happens in there, remember that you are strong. You made a choice to save yourself, and that took courage. You chose to marry me, and I will be grateful for that every day of my life. Tell the truth. That is all you can do." The courthouse was already full when they arrived. Zelda saw her father immediately, sitting in the front row with Edmund Crowley beside him. Charles Hartwell looked older than she remembered, his face drawn and gray. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes, relief maybe, or anger, she could not tell. Edmund's expression was easier to read, cold fury. The judge was a stern-looking man named Frederick Barnes. He called the hearing to order and asked Charles Hartwell to present his case. Her father stood, and for the first time since she had run from her wedding, Zelda heard his voice. "Your Honor, my daughter Zelda was supposed to marry Mr. Edmund Crowley on June 15th of this year. On that day, she disappeared from the church. I believe she was taken by force by Owen Garrett, who has been holding her against her will at his homestead. He subsequently coerced her into a false marriage to prevent her from returning to her family. I am asking that this illegal marriage be annulled, that my daughter be returned to my custody, and that Owen Garrett be arrested for kidnapping." Judge Barnes looked at Edmund. "Mr. Crowley, you were there the day Miss Hartwell disappeared." "I was, Your Honor. She never wanted to leave. She was nervous, as any bride would be, but she wanted to marry me. Someone must have threatened her or forced her to run. We tracked her and found her weeks later at Owen Garrett's cabin. When we tried to bring her home, Garrett assaulted me and threatened to kill us if we came back. It was lies, but Edmund told them smoothly, confidently." Zelda felt sick. Judge Barnes turned to Owen. "Mr. Garrett, how do you respond to these accusations?" Owen stood, his voice calm. "Your Honor, every word of that is false. I first saw Miss Hartwell, now Mrs. Garrett, on June 15th when she came running down the road outside Tropic in her wedding dress, begging for help. She told me she could not marry Mr. Crowley, that she needed to get away. I offered her shelter at my cabin, asking nothing in return. She stayed there of her own free will for 2 months. When Mr. Crowley and his associates found her at my cabin in August, I witnessed him strike her in the face and threaten her. Yes, I removed him from my property with force. Any man would do the same to protect someone he cared about. Mrs. Garrett and I married because we fell in love, not because of coercion. She is here of her own free will and can testify to that herself." Judge Barnes looked at Zelda. "Mrs. Garrett or Miss Hartwell, whichever you prefer, please stand and tell the court what happened in your own words." Zelda stood, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone in the courtroom must be able to hear it. She looked at her father, at Edmund, then at Owen, who gave her an encouraging nod. She took a breath and spoke. Your Honor, my name is Zelda Garrett. I ran from my wedding because I could not marry Edmund Crowley. I barely knew him. The marriage was a business arrangement between him and my father. I had no say in it. Edmund frightened me. He was controlling and sometimes cruel in small ways that others did not see. On my wedding day, I realized I would rather face an uncertain future alone than spend my life trapped in a marriage with a man I did not love and who did not love me. So I ran. Her father started to speak, but Judge Barnes held up a hand. "Let her finish, Mr. Hartwell." Zelda continued, her voice growing stronger. "I ran and Owen Garrett found me on the road. He gave me shelter and asked nothing in return. He treated me with respect and kindness. He let me decide what I wanted to do. After 2 months, Edmund found me at the cabin and he did strike me. Owen protected me from further harm. Owen asked me to marry him and I said yes because I love him, because he is a good man who treats me as an equal, because I wanted to choose my own husband for once in my life. Nobody coerced me, Your Honor. Nobody forced me. I married Owen Garrett because I wanted to, and I am asking you to respect that choice." There was silence in the courtroom when she finished. Then her father stood, his voice shaking with emotion. "Zelda, please, you are my daughter. You do not know what you are saying. This man has clearly manipulated you. Come home, we can fix this." "No, father," Zelda looked at him directly. "I am not coming home. I am exactly where I want to be with the man I chose to marry. You never asked what I wanted. You just assumed I would go along with your plans. But I am not a business asset. I am a person with my own thoughts and feelings and desires, and I choose Owen." Judge Barnes called Samuel Porter to testify next. Samuel explained how Owen and Zelda had come to him, how Zelda had clearly stated she was there of her own free will, how the marriage had been performed legally with proper witnesses. He produced the marriage certificate, properly signed and filed. The judge asked several more questions, then said he needed time to consider. "This is a serious matter. I will review the testimony and issue my decision tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Court is adjourned." Zelda felt Owen's hand on her back, steadying her as they left the courtroom. Her father tried to approach her, but Owen stepped between them. "I think enough has been said for today, Mr. Hartwell." They went back to their hotel room and Zelda collapsed on the bed, exhausted. "I think I did well, but my father is so influential, Owen. What if the judge sides with him despite everything?" "Then we run," Owen said simply. "Tonight, if we have to, we will not wait around to be separated." But Samuel Porter, when he came to check on them that evening, thought they had a good chance. "The judge is a fair man, and you told a compelling story, Mrs. Garrett. The marriage certificate is legal and properly filed. Your testimony was clear that you acted of your own free will. I think he will uphold the marriage." That night, Zelda and Owen lay awake holding each other, waiting for morning. The courtroom was packed when they returned at 9 o'clock. Judge Barnes entered and everyone stood. The judge sat, shuffled his papers, and began to speak. "I have reviewed the testimony and evidence in this matter. This is a complicated case involving family relationships, questions of consent, and the validity of a marriage. However, several facts are clear. First, Miss Hartwell, now Mrs. Garrett, was 23 years old at the time of these events, well past the age of majority. She had the legal right to refuse marriage and to leave her father's home if she chose. Second, the marriage between Zelda Hartwell and Owen Garrett was performed legally by a proper authority with appropriate witnesses. The marriage certificate is in order. Third, Mrs. Garrett has testified clearly and credibly that she married of her own free will, that she was not coerced, and that she wishes to remain married to Mr. Garrett." Judge Barnes paused and looked at Charles Hartwell. "Mr. Hartwell, I understand that you are upset by your daughter's choices. But she is an adult with the right to make those choices, even if you disagree with them. I find no evidence that Mr. Garrett kidnapped your daughter or coerced her in any way. Therefore, I am denying your petition to annul the marriage. The marriage between Zelda Hartwell and Owen Garrett stands as legal and valid. No charges will be filed against Mr. Garrett. This case is dismissed. The gavel came down, and Zelda felt her knees go weak with relief. Owen caught her, and she turned and buried her face against his chest. They had won. They were safe. Their marriage was legal and protected. Behind them, Charles Hartwell made a sound of protest. Your Honor, please reconsider. You do not understand what this man has done to my family. Mr. Hartwell, my decision is final. Your daughter has made her choice. I suggest you learn to respect it. Judge Barnes stood and left the courtroom. Zelda turned to look at her father. He looked old and defeated, and for a moment she felt a pang of sympathy. But then Edmund stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. This is not over. You think you can humiliate me, embarrass me in front of the whole territory, and just walk away? I will destroy you both. Careful, Crowley, Samuel Porter said, stepping between them. Threatening people in front of witnesses is a good way to get yourself arrested. Edmund looked like he wanted to say more, but Charles Hartwell put a hand on his arm. Come on, Edmund. We are finished here. He looked at Zelda one last time. If you ever change your mind, if you ever realize what a mistake you have made, do not come back. You have chosen your path. You are no longer my daughter. The words hit Zelda like a physical blow, but she lifted her chin. Then I guess this is goodbye, Father. I hope someday you understand that I am happier now than I ever was in your house. Charles Hartwell turned and walked out of the courtroom, Edmund following. Zelda watched them go, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. She had lost her father, but she had gained her freedom and her life with Owen. It was worth it. Are you all right? Owen asked softly. Yes, Zelda said, and realized it was true. I am all right. I am more than all right. I am free. They left Panguitch that afternoon and rode back to their cabin in the hidden valley. As they approached and the cabin came into view, Zelda felt a surge of joy. This was home, not her father's big house in Tropic with all its fine furnishings. This simple cabin where she worked hard every day and fell asleep every night in the arms of the man she loved. Over the next months, as autumn turned to winter, they settled into their life together. Owen taught Zelda more about running the homestead. They worked on expanding the cabin, adding a second room. They talked about the future, about maybe getting more cattle in the spring, about the children they hoped to have someday. Zelda discovered she was pregnant in February, 5 months after their wedding. She told Owen one evening as they sat by the fire, suddenly nervous. I am with child, she said simply. Owen's face transformed with joy. He pulled her into his arms and held her close. A baby. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Zelda asked, needing to hear it. Happy does not begin to cover it. Owen pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. You have given me everything, Zelda. A reason to rejoin the world, a home that feels like home, love, and now a child. I am the luckiest man alive. I am the lucky one, Zelda said. You saved my life that day on the road. You gave me shelter and asked nothing in return. You showed me what real love looks like. We saved each other, Owen said, and kissed her. The baby, a son, was born in late October of 1883, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's eyes. They named him Samuel after the friend who had married them. Holding her son for the first time, Zelda felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. This was her family. This was the life she had chosen. When Samuel was 3 months old, there was a knock on the cabin door. Owen answered it, his hand near his gun, cautious. But the visitor was unexpected. Charles Hartwell alone, looking older than his years. "I do not want trouble," Charles said immediately. "I just want to talk to my daughter, to meet my grandson, if she will allow it." Zelda came to the door, Samuel in her arms, and looked at her father. She saw genuine regret in his face and exhaustion, and something that might have been longing. "Why are you here, father?" "Because I was wrong," Charles said simply. "Because I have spent the last year angry and bitter, and it has gained me nothing. Because my business partner, Edmund Crowley, turned out to be a thief who nearly bankrupted me before fleeing the territory. Because I realized that I drove away the only family I had left over pride and money and foolish ideas about what a daughter should be." He looked at the baby. "Because that is my grandson, and I have already missed so much of his life." Zelda looked at Owen, who gave a small nod. It was her decision. She looked back at her father. "If you come in, you have to understand some things. I am not coming back to Tropic. This is my home. Owen is my husband and I love him. Samuel is our son. I am happy here. If you cannot accept that, then you should leave now." "I accept it," Charles said. "I just want to be part of your life again, if you will let me, in whatever way you will allow." Zelda stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come in, father. Meet your grandson." It was not a perfect reconciliation. There were awkward moments and difficult conversations. But over time, Charles Hartwell became a part of their lives again. He visited regularly, bearing gifts for his grandson, slowly building a relationship with Owen based on mutual respect, if not friendship. He sold his house in Tropic and moved to a smaller place in Panguitch to be closer to Zelda and her family. He seemed lighter somehow, as though letting go of his rigid expectations had freed him too. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic toddler who loved helping his father with the animals and listening to his mother read stories. 2 years after Samuel was born, Zelda gave birth to twin daughters, Emma and Rose, who had their mother's red gold hair and their father's quiet nature. The cabin grew more crowded and more chaotic, and Zelda loved every minute of it. On a warm evening in June of 1888, 6 years after she had fled her wedding, Zelda stood outside the cabin watching Owen play with their children in the meadow. Samuel was teaching his sisters how to identify birds, very serious about his role as big brother. Owen was laughing at something Samuel said, the sound carrying across the valley. Zelda thought about the girl she had been, trapped in a silk wedding dress, running for her life with no plan beyond escape. She thought about the moment Owen had pulled her onto his horse, a stranger offering help with no thought of reward. She thought about everything that had followed, the slow building of trust, the growing love, the choice to build a life together. She had been running toward freedom that day. But what she had found was so much more. She had found home. She had found partnership. She had found a love that was patient and kind and equal, that lifted her up instead of diminishing her. She had found the courage to be herself, to choose her own path, to create the life she wanted instead of accepting the one that had been planned for her. Owen looked up and saw her watching, and his whole face softened with love. He said something to the children and they looked over too, then came running toward her, Samuel in the lead, the twins trying to keep up on their short legs. Owen followed at a slower pace, smiling. "Mama, Mama." Samuel called. "Papa says we can see the stars tonight before bed. Did he now?" Zelda swept Samuel into a hug and then bent to catch the twins as they collided with her skirts. "That sounds wonderful." Owen reached her and pulled her close, children and all, wrapping his family in his arms. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Zelda said. "Thank you for saving me." "Thank you for letting me," Owen replied. That night, after the children were asleep, Zelda and Owen sat outside the cabin as they had so many nights before, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Owen held her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, a gesture so familiar now that she barely noticed it. But she noticed everything else: the solid warmth of him beside her, the peace of this valley they called home, the sound of their children's breathing through the open cabin window. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked suddenly. "Giving up your father's money, the life you could have had?" "Never," Zelda said without hesitation. "Not once. That was not life, Owen. That was existence. This is life. Hard work and calloused hands and children who track mud through the house and a husband who loves me. This is everything I did not know I wanted until I found it." "Good," Owen said and pulled her closer. "Because I plan on keeping you for the next 50 or 60 years at least." "Only 50 or 60, Zelda teased. "I was hoping for longer." "However long we get," Owen said seriously, "I will be grateful for every single day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, and Zelda thought about the journey that had brought her here. It had started with fear and desperation, with running from something she could not bear. But somewhere along the way it had transformed into running toward something beautiful, something real, something worth fighting for. She had been lost, and Owen had given her shelter. He had asked nothing in return, expecting nothing. But she had given him everything anyway: her trust, her heart, her future. And he had done the same for her, creating something neither of them could have built alone. This was not the life anyone had planned for her. It was better. It was real. It was hers. And as the stars wheeled overhead and Owen's steady presence anchored her to this moment, this place, this life, Zelda Garrett understood that sometimes the best decisions are the ones that look most like mistakes from the outside. Sometimes running away is actually running toward something. Sometimes a stranger's kindness can change everything. Sometimes love grows slowly and quietly in unexpected places, becoming the foundation of a life more wonderful than any carefully laid plan could have created. She had fled her wedding in a desperate bid for freedom, and a cowboy had given her shelter, asking nothing in return. What she had found was so much more than shelter. She had found home. She had found love. She had found herself. And that, Zelda thought as Owen pressed a kiss to her temple, and their children slept peacefully in the cabin behind them, was worth more than all her father's money, all of Edmund's promises, all the security and respectability she had been supposed to want. This life, messy and imperfect and absolutely full of love, was worth everything. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. The homestead prospered. The children grew. Charles Hartwell became a devoted grandfather who spoiled his grandchildren shamelessly and learned to respect the life his daughter had chosen. The valley remained their sanctuary, a place apart from the changing world beyond. When Samuel was 10, Emma and Rose 8, Zelda gave birth to another son whom they named William. And 2 years after that, a final daughter, Clara, completed their family. The cabin, expanded multiple times, rang with the noise and chaos of 5 children, and Zelda would not have had it any other way. Owen proved to be a patient, loving father who taught his children to work hard, to think independently, to treat others with respect. He taught the boys to ride and rope and care for the land. He taught the girls all the same things, insisting that his daughters should know how to handle themselves in the world just as well as his sons. Zelda taught them all to read and write and think critically, using the education she had received to give her children opportunities she had been denied. As the children grew older and more independent, Zelda sometimes thought about teaching other children as she had once dreamed. She mentioned it to Owen one evening, expecting him to say it was impractical or unnecessary. Instead, he said, "Then do it. Turn one of the empty sheds into a schoolroom. Teach the children from the surrounding homesteads. You would be wonderful at it." So she did. 2 mornings a week, children from neighboring families came to the Garrett homestead for lessons. Zelda taught them reading and writing, history and mathematics, all the things she believed every child deserved to learn. She charged nothing, considering it her contribution to the community. Owen supported her completely, taking on extra work to free up her time, never once suggesting that her teaching was less important than his ranching. It was, Zelda often thought, the life she had been meant to live all along. Not the constrained, controlled existence her father had planned for her, but this full, busy, purposeful life where she was valued for who she was, not what she could do for someone else's ambitions. Samuel Porter, who had married them all those years ago, died peacefully in his sleep in 1895. At his funeral, Owen cried openly, unashamed of his grief for the friend who had helped make their marriage legal and protected. They named their youngest son, born the following year in a late-life surprise pregnancy, Samuel in honor of the man who had believed in them. Charles Hartwell lived to see all 7 of his grandchildren, making peace with his daughter and son-in-law before his death in 1898. At his bedside, he took Zelda's hand and said, "I was a fool. I nearly destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too proud and too stubborn to see that you knew what you needed better than I did. But you forgave me anyway. You gave me back my family. Thank you, daughter." "I love you, father," Zelda said through her tears. "I always did, even when I ran." "I know," Charles said, "and I love you. I am so proud of the woman you have become, the life you have built. Your mother would be proud too." He looked at Owen, standing behind Zelda. "Take care of her, Garrett, always," Owen said simply. As the new century approached, bringing changes to Utah and the West, the Garrett homestead remained a constant. The children grew up strong and capable, armed with their parents' values and work ethic. Samuel, the eldest, chose to become a teacher like his mother. Emma became a nurse. Rose surprised everyone by becoming a lawyer, fighting for women's rights in the new century. William took over the homestead, loving the land as his father did. Clara became a doctor. The younger Samuel chose a life of wandering, writing about the West he loved. And the youngest, Catherine, became a rancher like her father, running her own successful operation. Owen and Zelda grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1933, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they renewed their vows in the small church in Panguitch. Zelda, now 74 with silver hair and hands gnarled by decades of hard work, stood beside Owen, 77 and still strong despite the years, and repeated the promises they had made a lifetime ago. "I, Zelda, take you, Owen, to be my husband," she said, her voice still clear. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Owen's voice was steady as he repeated his own vows, looking at her with the same love he had shown that day in Samuel Porter's office half a century before. "I, Owen, take you, Zelda, to be my wife." When the minister pronounced them once again husband and wife, Owen kissed her to the cheers and applause of their enormous family. 50 years, he murmured against her lips. "Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Zelda corrected. "The best was pulling me onto your horse that day." "That was not a decision," Owen said, smiling. "That was instinct. Seeing you running toward me, I knew I had to help. Everything else followed from that moment." They lived 5 more years together in the cabin they had built and expanded and filled with love. Owen died peacefully in his sleep in 1938 at the age of 82. Zelda beside him as she had been for 56 years. His last words were, "I love you. Thank you for choosing me." Zelda lived 2 more years, surrounded by family, before joining Owen in the small cemetery outside Panguitch. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, her children had inscribed, "She ran toward freedom and found love." The cabin still stands in the hidden valley, maintained now by the Garrett family as a reminder of where they came from. Tourists sometimes find it, drawn by the story of the banker's daughter who fled her wedding and the cowboy who gave her shelter, asking nothing in return. They look at the simple structure, the red rock cliffs around it, the valley that must have seemed like sanctuary all those years ago. But the real story is not in the cabin or the valley. It is in the choice Zelda made on that hot June day in 1882, the choice to run toward an uncertain future rather than accept a certain cage. It is in Owen's instinctive kindness, his willingness to help without expectation of reward. It is in the slow building of trust and friendship that became love. It is in the life they built together, the family they raised, the love that sustained them through 56 years of joys and sorrows. It is a story about courage and kindness, about choosing freedom over security, about love that grows from respect and partnership. It is a story that ended not with the dramatic rescue or the legal battle or even the wedding, but with two old people who had loved each other well for more than half a century, who had built a life of meaning and purpose, who had raised children who went on to make the world better in their own ways. It is, in the end, a story about what happens when someone runs toward hope and finds a hand reaching back to help, about what can grow when kindness is offered freely and accepted gratefully, about the life that is possible when two people choose each other every day for a lifetime. And in the hidden valley in southern Utah, where the red rocks still glow in the sunset and the stars still shine brilliant in the darkness, that story lives on.